Hi there, my name is Sam. This is Stingray Photo Co. I'm an educator turned photographer who is here to pour out everything that I know to hopefully help you grow in the areas of your photography that you're struggling with the most, to help inspire you to do more. I promise it's so simple. So being that it's engagement season at the time of recording this, I simply could not wait any longer to tell the story of how I actually booked and prepared for my first wedding as a photographer. I did only start my business 2 years ago. The amount of wedding bookings that clients that I've gotten and all that has grown so much faster than I thought possible, than I was prepared for. So I'm here to kind of walk you guys through how the hell that happened. We're gonna have some practical steps that you can take if you are starting off your photography business, or hopefully things you can integrate that you're not doing yet, while also giving a short story time as to how this all came to be. I began working with professional DSLR cameras when I was in high school, which was over a decade ago. So I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had the cameras. I was kind of learning the mechanics of working in manual mode and that process. Now, I began Stingray Photo Co. right after the worst of the pandemic, like in 2021. And I had my eyes set on photographing weddings like from the gate, but sitting here with effectively no professional portfolio of anything like in recent years, how am I gonna get that first wedding booked? I remember thinking that it would take me years to do so. There are some things I did that I think really helped me move up the timeline for what I thought possible, what I thought would be possible for photographing that first wedding. Not to mention, when I began this Photo Co., the only camera I had was still a first DSLR that I had that was like 11, 12 years old. It was a Canon Rebel T2i. I mean, there's not even like a solid price on those resale today because it's just like such an old camera that don't shoot a wedding with a Canon Rebel T2i. Frankly, the megapixels are too low in my opinion, but I started the company, and within that first year, I had my first wedding booked, and since then, the ball has been rolling. I mean, just guys. Our question is, how the hell does somebody go from like a newbie photographer with a sad clown camera to being an established wedding photographer in just a year or two? Okay, the first thing that I think made me very successful in this endeavor in starting a business that was emphasizing on wedding photography is the fact that I love weddings. Please don't roll your eyes. I mean this sincerely. It makes me think of that quote from La La Land, how, people are interested in what other people are passionate about. Like, I think that's very true. I've realized that my best photography is happening when I am the most excited and invested in the subject. And that's going to be true for anybody in any field. When you are excited about something, it improves the quality of your work, and it gives you the stamina to push through some of like the difficult challenges that will inevitably come up in whatever you're pursuing. So I love weddings. That made me really successful in setting up the events to follow. If you were similar, like if you just love thinking about weddings and wedding trends and just like all the beautiful little pieces that come together, or love stories, like you're off to a good start. If you kind of like dread the idea of being a wedding photographer, like legitimately don't think it sounds like fun, but you think it's profitable, I'm going to encourage you to like reassess and reevaluate maybe like why that is and what other types of things might you be more interested in, because it's going to just be a lot harder to sustain passionately a business when you just aren't that into it. Now, anybody can be a great photographer, don't get me wrong, but make sure that if you're wanting to do weddings, if you want to book weddings, it's going to really help if there's something about the wedding process that just really excites you. So with that, what excites you the most when you're thinking about types of photography? Whatever one's coming to mind, the things that excite you the most is probably going to be where your strengths are. Think about that. Next, the first like practical tip that you can start applying into what you're doing right now is be obnoxious. Truly. When I first started my business, I was obnoxious. I was incessant. I was loud. I was cringe, and I did not give a damn because it's what you gotta do. I want to emphasize here, that wasn't easy for me at all. I am much more the type of person who would rather kind of hang back, get my ducks in a row before putting my neck out there. So that was difficult, but I just started blasting, because that's effectively what marketing is. And I'll make this caveat here. The success of your photography business, if you want to turn this into a career, has exponentially more to do with your marketing than with your skills. Like, I want to vomit saying that, I hear you, and you obviously have to have the skills to support what you're doing, but all the time you see people complaining, and like there's such and such photographer who is just exploding a business and her work's not that good, like what's going on? It's marketing. It has to be both, and this was a big lesson that I learned in scaling my business, but I will talk about that in detail at another time. But anyway, this is why you have to be loud. Now, by loud, I just mean appearing everywhere. They say on average, people need to like hear or see your brand, your pitch, whatever, like 5 to 7 times, I think, before making that buy-in. What that meant for me beginning all of this was making sure that people that I had access to knew that I was beginning a photography company and that this was something I am doing, I'm excited about, and I'm working on constantly. For somebody who's shy, what helped me make this bridge was just deciding, no, I want to be a full-time photographer. I am burning these boats. There is no turning back. I just have to dive all in. And the reason why this works is two parts. One, people need to know that you're there. So much of your success is just getting people to know that you are there. I've helped people start up new brands and they're surprised when they don't sell out of their new product overnight, but they've only had like 3 people visit their website. I tell them, hey, if everybody in the world saw what you're selling right now, like, you'd be sold out in 10 minutes. But the problem is like people don't know you're there. So by being obnoxious, you're letting a fairly large group of people on whoever you have, Facebook, Instagram, just your personal social media accounts, you're letting them know that you're there. And the second part of that is to become the person that they think of when someone inevitably asks, hey, do you need a photographer? Or do you know a photographer? Just think about in your own life. If somebody is like, hey, do you know somebody who likes Taylor Swift? Who is the first person that comes into your mind? You know, like if you have a huge Taylor Swift fan in your life, they're going to be very vocal about that, right? And like that person's in your mind and you think of that person immediately because you have so many different memories of watching them or listening to them talk about that. Or I mean, it could be any number of things. People who are super into your local sports team or cooking, or like Disney people are really loud. I think of these things in particular because it's things that people talk about a lot, you know. People who love Christmas. I mean, maybe this is all the same type of person I'm thinking, but anyway. Frankly, side note, when Green Day launched their national tour, the amount of people I had text me that I have not spoken to in years, I've always just been super passionately obsessed with Green Day. And when they announced they were going on tour, so many people thought, oh my god, I have to reach out to Sam and let her know. Anyway, marketing. That's why you have to be obnoxious. You have to let people know that you're there and you have to be the person that they think of when somebody is looking for a photographer. Practically what this looks like for me is, of course, I'm always sharing my my professional work on my personal profiles. I do it about like once a season, like at the end of summer, at the end of fall. I'll kind of pick, you know, 10 to 20 of my favorite photos and just give a little summary of what stood out to me for that season. And I always see a huge influx in inquiries of like families and weddings and all types of stuff after I post those, because it's a good reminder for people that you're there, and I always just see so much benefit from that. Similarly, you know, I've been able to have experiences where I went to like a high school reunion and I'm sitting there catching up with people, but talking business also. People planning their weddings with me, and like that would not have happened if I had not been sharing my work on my like personal medias. Those posts weren't blowing up. These people that asked me to photograph their weddings weren't like commenting on them right away, but I was stuck in their mind. So you can't let your need for validation stop you from posting and putting yourself out there, because you are holding yourself back. Your personal media accounts are like free advertising and you just need to roll with it, honestly. With that, you may not be getting inquiries like right away when you start posting on your personal stuff, and that's perfectly fine. Don't let that discourage you. How many times in a year does a person get married? Usually 0 times, right? If you're trying to be a wedding photographer, people may not need your services the second that you show up to them, but down the road they will. And this is where I've seen a lot of stuff scaling in my business. Same thing for, you know, family photos. There's seasons for that, for senior photography. If you can just get in the mind of somebody who will be a senior in the next couple of years, or who will have students in high school in the next couple of years, the marketing that you're doing today will pay off here in the future. Just start getting your work out there and getting used to talking about yourself confidently and comfortably, because that is going to be the most priceless skill, more important than any gear you can acquire. I mean, you just need to learn to be confident in your work, to be accepting of criticism without shutting down, and to be willing to put yourself out there knowing that your approval of your work is enough. Being present in your personal media with your work is going to help establish your first clients of people you would never think would approach to have them photograph you. You photograph them. Yeah. So we've got those first 2 practical steps of establishing your successful photography business, how to get that first client. 1, make sure it's something that you like, or shift gears to a subject matter that you are excited about, and to make sure that people that you have proximity to and influence on in social media are aware that you're there. Like, don't wait for them to come follow your Instagram, like your professional Instagram. You go to them, just spoon feed it. Okay, but now we have that foundation. I'm gonna give a really quick recap as to how I actually booked my first wedding. So the bride and groom were friends of a friend of mine. You know, we kind of knew of each other. They were planning a full-blown wedding. They have a wedding party. They have a venue, they've got the DJ, the everything, you know, somebody who's investing thousands of dollars, and their photographer got injured or got sick in a way that they would be unable to render their services at their wedding. So they're like 5-6 weeks out from their wedding and they have no photographer. And it's in the middle of a busy season and they were just kind of at a loss. But since I had been posting online and talking about it, my friend was able to make the suggestion like, hey, I think you would really resonate with Sam. Like, I think you guys should touch base. Like, I didn't have a wedding portfolio to show them. I just kind of talked to them about my experience with weddings already and some of the photos I had been taking. I mean, at this point in time, a lot of the work on my Instagram was like taken with my iPhone years ago, and that's what we were going off of. But we met up, we vibed, they trusted me, they saw the vision, and we made a deal. And I was their wedding photographer. And then the panic-induced frenzy began, and I learned a lot, and it was great. But major disclaimer, I do not recommend this strategy for everybody. What would have been ideal for me is to start talking to other photographers and second shooting for them, so you get the feel of what types of things to be prepared for on a wedding day, so that you can go into that lead photographer role confident with what you're doing, especially if you haven't been involved in a lot of weddings, if you haven't planned a wedding before yourself. I definitely just recommend that you go to a wedding with professional eyes on multiple times. But also, that's not what I did, so. But I did work extra hard to prepare for that wedding because I was going in not really blind, but kind of. And the day went great. Bride and groom loved their wedding photos, and that wedding has absolutely changed the trajectory of my entire business. So the invisible step here in between, start looking for other photographers you can shoot with. If you would like a more detailed explanation as to how the heck do you find a photographer to shoot with or anything like that, let me know. I'd be happy to extrapolate on that, but I don't want to be repeating stuff that you already know. So that's how I got that wedding, and then I want to break down how I prepared for that, since I was just kind of jumping into the deep end. Step number 3 is see what you're getting into. If you've been a member of a wedding party before, or if you've had your own wedding, you know just how quickly the entire day can go. And every 30-40 minutes, you know, there's these important once-in-a-lifetime things happening, and sometimes chaos happens last minute, and the day can just go so quickly. And if you don't have a roadmap on what to expect and how to pace the day and how to be prepared for like common challenges that might come up, you might just get swept off your feet, or like, you know, kind of pulled away in the tide of all of the chaos. So definitely be prepared. But Sam, how do I prepare for a wedding when I don't know? Yeah, see, this beautiful place that we're on here, YouTube, like there is such a nauseating amount of resources here. Just start here. I'm going to have some of my favorite wedding photographers that I watched incessantly when I was preparing for this wedding. John Branch comes to mind. He's got these incredibly long, detailed videos of showing what his behind-the-scenes wedding day stuff looks like, why he makes choices that he does for lighting and for also managing people's emotions and all of that. You know, I was at home. If I'm making dinner, I've got a wedding photography behind-the-scenes video on. If I'm like in the bath, if I'm driving, I'm listening to people talk about it. I'm just ingesting as much as I can. And you kind of start to synthesize and figure out, this is what I want to be part of my wedding day experience as the photographer, this I don't care so much about, and that was just foundational in making sure I could actually pull off this first wedding. So number 4 is to make sure you have the right gear. Like I said, I started my professional business and Instagram with things like my iPhone and my 12-year-old camera, but now that I was actually photographing somebody's wedding day, I knew that that would not cut it. I didn't have the money to buy a new camera though, so I rented one. A lot of cities have rental options. There's a lot of options online for rentals as well. And I rented the camera bodies and camera body singular and the lens that I wanted to use. And then I had my other camera as a backup. And I need to just do a separate video to show the side-by-sides of how those turned out, because I ended up not using any of the photos from my Rebel T2i, because just compared to the body I shot on, which was the Canon 5D Mark IV, which is still not like a new camera by any stretch, but it's what worked for me and it's what I'm shooting on exclusively now. I didn't use any of like the Rebel photos. They just were not up to par for my style of photography and for the quality I was going for, so we just scrapped those. Yeah, so I rented those. I also knew there were going to be a lot of low light elements in the wedding, so I mean like reception. So I bought a flash. I bought rain covers. I got a new camera bag. I mean, it really was a big I think almost all of the money that I got for that first wedding, I had immediately reinvested back into my gear. Because that's the thing, when you get to that point, when you do have your first wedding booked, the last thing that you want to happen is to be unprepared for something that a professional photographer should be prepared for. Like, oh no, there's not a lot of light in this room. Your only backup plan cannot be to just keep raising your ISO. Like, that is not a solid plan forward. Start with an on-camera flash, work your way up to off camera, all of that. But you know, if you do not have some type of additional lighting system on your camera, that's going to be a really big one. To make sure that the camera you're shooting on has high enough megapixels to be able to print high quality images. Now that was really a bigger thing like 10 years ago. Nowadays you're not really going to run into that problem, but if you are working with an older camera, it is going to be something to keep in mind. I recommend like anything 22 megapixels or higher, you're pretty much going to be golden. So And then finally for weddings, I'm going to absolutely recommend a zoom lens. For me, what I rented and eventually purchased for myself because I loved it so much was a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. I should probably just, you know what? Yeah, so that looks like this. And this was absolutely crucial in getting those ceremony shots. So this is still one of my main ceremony cameras to get close-ups of all types of people, but there's that bad boy. So I would highly, highly recommend shooting with 2 cameras if you can, and doing so with different focal lengths so that, you know, you can see like a cute moment happening over here and get like a close-up image of what's happening, and then also just pick up a second camera and kind of get, you know, the shot of whatever the moment is, and switching back and forth, you're going to get a really good, varied and beautiful wedding gallery as a result of that. Beyond that, things that I started at that first wedding and habits I continue now, going through and doing a complete walkthrough of my like huge wedding day packing list. I'll go ahead and include a link to that in the description because it's something I've referenced before. Every single wedding that I go to, it includes things that I need to stay like healthy and hygienic, and all the way down to what do I need in case something happens with the bridal party or whatever. You can, you know, pick and choose off that list what resonates with you the most. Maybe you don't feel like bringing a fabric steamer to every single one of your weddings. I do, because it just makes me feel more confident when I am actually shooting, and I know that people's dresses kind of got wrinkled or something, like it happens. Things like, even if your bride says she has a custom hanger for her wedding dress, I'm still going to bring my own backup hanger, because if she has like a $2,000 gown and it's just gorgeous, I do not want to be photographing that on a flimsy piece of plastic. It ruins the scene, and I'm never going to leave that up to somebody else to make sure that I get that detail in the shot. Like, I'm just always going to bring a hanger with me. But maybe you're like less anxious and tedious than I am, so take a look at that list if you're not totally sure what to bring. I do travel with suitcases for my gear because I just find that's easier, just backpacks and suitcases and what have you. So that is how I booked and prepared for my first wedding. I would be more than happy to go into any details about this further. Feel free to go ahead and drop a comment or DM me on Instagram. I would love to start a conversation with you if you have any questions about this. Just to restate, if you were looking to book your first wedding, to make sure this is something that you want to pursue, and maybe to just be able to quickly answer to yourself, why do I want to be a wedding photographer? Number 2 is to make sure that you are making your presence known, making sure they're remembering you when people are asking about wedding photographers, by getting some hands-on experience shooting weddings, by being a second photographer or anything of that nature. People are so helpful. Number 4, to watch some pros behind the scenes on YouTube and to watch all of their, you know, super quick tips and the full videos. Just engage and, you know, like just Kirby, just suck in as much information as you possibly can to help cover and smoothen any of like the gaps that you might have in your wedding day knowledge, to make sure that your gear is up to speed, making sure that you've got everything you need for lighting and different focal lengths, and that your camera is going to keep up with the day. And yeah, basically that. This is a really rough outline, but so many people I know get stuck on how do I just get over that hump of that first wedding client. I do hope this is helpful. I hope, if nothing else, it is encouraging. I promise you it can happen. Even if it doesn't feel super easy all the time, stay confident. I promise you your work is so much more beautiful than you can imagine, and it is an ever-growing art. So once again, feel free to follow me and shoot me a message on Instagram at Stingray Photo Co. Or to leave a comment here, and I would be more than happy to help answer any questions or direct you to any resources that I've used along the way that I found beneficial. Thanks for stopping by, and till next time, pals.